The room wasn't loud when Frank Zappa spoke. That was the first thing Prince noticed. No laughter, no reactions, just a few heads turning slightly, the way they do when something unexpected lands without warning. Zappa stood near the piano, arms loosely crossed, posture relaxed but alert. He wasn't smiling. He didn't need to. His reputation did that work for him. A composer known for complexity, for precision, for rhythms that punished anyone who didn't pay attention. Prince was a few steps away, guitar resting against his side, listening. Zappa tilted his head, just enough to signal curiosity rather than confrontation. "Try 7/8," he said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't frame it as a joke. But everyone in the room understood what it was. A challenge, not an insult, not a test of speed or flash. A test of control. 7/8 wasn't something you threw out casually. It was a rhythm musicians respected but rarely trusted. Easy to count, hard to feel. Most people could play it. Very few could make it disappear. Prince didn't respond right away. That pause mattered. Some challenges were designed to be answered quickly, to catch hesitation, to expose uncertainty. Prince had learned that the fastest way to lose control of the moment was to rush into it. He adjusted the guitar strap instead. A small movement, deliberate, calm. Around them, musicians waited. Not eagerly, carefully. These are people used to watching reputations collide without anyone admitting that's what was happening. Zappa's eyes stayed on Prince. He wasn't looking for dominance. He was listening for understanding. Prince finally spoke. His voice was even, almost quiet. "All right." No follow-up, no explanation. He stepped forward and took a seat, not center stage, not under the brightest light. Slightly off to the side, where the sound would settle before it reached anyone else. That choice didn't go unnoticed. Zappa shifted his weight and leaned against the piano, attentive now. Prince placed his fingers on the strings. Then he stopped, just for a moment. The room leaned with him. He didn't count out loud. He didn't tap his foot. He began to play, as if the rhythm had already been there, waiting. At first, it sounded almost ordinary. A simple pattern, clean, unremarkable. Someone in the back relaxed slightly. Then the shape emerged. Not the math of 7/8. The movement of it. Prince wasn't dividing the rhythm. He was breathing through it, letting certain notes arrive early, others stretch just enough to blur the count without breaking it. Zappa's posture changed. Subtly, he uncrossed his arms. Prince continued, building nothing that resembled a demonstration. No runs, no emphasis, just placement. Each note arriving exactly where it needed to be, not where the count said it should. The room grew quiet in a different way. Not tense, focused. 7/8 was no longer the point. Prince shifted keys without announcing it. The rhythm stayed intact, unshaken, anchored. The change was emotional, not technical. The kind of move that only worked if you trusted the ground beneath you. Zappa watched closely now, not judging, tracking. Prince introduced a phrase that shouldn't have fit. It hovered just outside expectation, threatening to fall apart. It didn't. Instead, it settled. Zappa's eyebrows lifted slightly, not in surprise, in recognition. This wasn't someone solving a problem. This was someone removing it. Prince didn't look up. He didn't acknowledge the room. He let the music carry itself long enough for everyone to forget why it had started. When he finally stopped, he didn't cut the sound short. He let it finish its own thought. Silence followed. Not the polite kind. Not the kind waiting for applause. The kind that arrives when no one wants to interrupt what just resolved itself. Zappa didn't speak. He didn't nod. He simply stood there, listening to the absence of sound as if it were part of the piece. Prince remained seated, hands resting lightly on the guitar, eyes lowered. This wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of something shifting. Someone cleared their throat quietly. Zappa finally spoke, his voice lower than before. "You didn't count it." Prince looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time. "No," he said. "I trusted it." Zappa held that for a moment. Then he smiled. Not broadly, not performatively, The smile of someone who had just seen a familiar thing done in a way he hadn't expected. Most people try to tame 7/8, Zappa said. You let walk. Prince nodded. It knows where it's going. That was all. No explanation followed. None was needed. The room exhaled collectively, as if permission had been granted to breathe again. Zappa stepped closer, looking at the guitar, then back at Prince. Play it again, he said, but don't change a thing. Prince adjusted his grip slightly and began. This time, the room listened differently. Not to evaluate, not to compare, but to understand. And Frank Zappa said nothing at all. Prince didn't change a note. That was the first thing Zappa noticed. Most musicians, when asked to repeat something, instinctively improved it. They added detail, sharpened edges, corrected what they assumed had been luck. Prince did none of that. He played the same way, and that sameness was revealing. The rhythm didn't wobble. It didn't announce itself. 7/8 moved beneath the melody like a current you only felt once you stepped into it. Prince wasn't riding it. He wasn't chasing it. He was standing inside it. Zappa listened without blinking. Around them, the musicians had stopped thinking in numbers altogether. No one was counting anymore. The usual mental math had dissolved, replaced by something closer to instinct. That was dangerous territory, and Zappa knew it. When Prince finished the second time, he let the final chord fade even longer than before. He waited until the sound left the room completely, until the silence felt intentional rather than awkward. Only then did he lift his hands from the strings. Zappa exhaled slowly. You know, he said, not looking at anyone in particular, most people hear 7/8 as a problem to solve. Prince remained still. They asked where the extra beat is, Zappa continued. Where it hides. How to keep track of it. He finally looked at Prince. You didn't hide anything. Prince shrugged lightly. Nothing was missing. Zappa smiled again, this time with a trace of something else beneath it. Curiosity, maybe even caution. He walked a few steps across the room, then turned back. Where did you learn to feel it like that? Prince thought for a moment. By not trying to control it. That answer landed heavier than it sounded. Zappa nodded slowly. Most composers would hate that answer. Prince met his gaze. Most composers write for paper first. Zappa laughed quietly. Not defensively. Appreciatively. That's fair, he said. The room loosened after that. Not into noise, but into conversation. Musicians shifted closer. Someone picked up an instrument without asking. Another added a subtle harmony, careful not to disturb the foundation Prince had laid down. Prince listened more than he played now. Zappa watched him listen. That was the real surprise. Prince wasn't guarding the rhythm. He was offering it, letting others step into it, trusting that it would hold them if they listened closely enough. A bassist stumbled briefly, then found his footing. A drummer tried to mark the beat, then abandoned the attempt and followed the shape instead. Zappa nodded, approving. Don't count it, he said to the room. Follow him. That sentence carried weight. Coming from anyone else, it would have sounded like encouragement. Coming from Zappa, it sounded like acknowledgement. The session stretched longer than planned. No one noticed the time. No one checked watches. The music unfolded without urgency, without direction being imposed. At one point, Prince stopped playing entirely. The rhythm continued anyway. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but alive. Prince watched, listening, hands resting quietly on the guitar. He didn't correct anyone. He didn't re-enter to save the moment. He let them carry it. Zappa noticed. He leaned toward Prince and lowered his voice. You're comfortable letting it fall apart. Prince nodded. If it can't survive that, it wasn't real. Zappa straightened, considering this. Most people are afraid of losing the room. Prince looked around. The room's not fragile. Zappa smiled, but this time he didn't speak. He didn't need to. When the music finally wound down on its own, there was no clear ending. No final hit. No cue. It simply stopped when it was done. Silence returned, heavier now, but not tense. Zappa stood still for a long moment, eyes unfocused, as if replaying something internally. Then he looked at Prince and said something no one expected. Do it once more, he said, but start wherever you want. That wasn't a test. It was an invitation. Prince adjusted his position slightly, then began, not on the downbeat, not on anything recognizable. He entered sideways, letting the rhythm catch up to him instead of the other way around. The effect was immediate. Zappa's expression shifted again. This time, there was no smile, just attention. Prince wasn't responding to a challenge anymore. He was showing possibility. When he stopped, Zappa didn't speak at all. He simply nodded once. Slowly, decisively. The room understood what that meant. Zappa stepped back from the piano and gestured lightly toward Prince. Not theatrically, not publicly, but enough. Prince stood and set the guitar aside. The challenge was over. Not because someone had won, because there was nothing left to challenge. If you're still watching, pay attention to what didn't happen. There was no declaration, no praise, no verbal surrender, just a shift in who the room trusted to lead it. And from that moment on, Frank Zappa didn't say another word about 7/8. He didn't need to. The rhythm had already spoken for itself. The room didn't erupt after that. It recalibrated. People spoke more softly, as if volume might interfere with whatever had just settled into place. Instruments were set down carefully. No one rushed to summarize what had happened. That was telling. Moments that needed explanation were usually the loudest ones. This didn't need one. Zappa moved first, not toward Prince, but toward the window. He stood there with his back to the room, looking out, hands in his pockets. It wasn't dismissal. It was processing. Prince remained where he was, guitar resting against the chair, posture relaxed. He didn't fill the space Zappa had left open. He didn't follow. That distance mattered. After a long moment, Zappa turned back. You know, he said, addressing no one in particular, people think odd meters are about complexity. Prince waited. They're not, Zappa continued. They're about honesty. You can't hide in them. Prince nodded slightly. They tell you when you're lying. Zappa smiled at that, but there was no humor in it, just recognition. The musicians began to pack up, slowly. Conversations started in fragments, half sentences, glances, a shared understanding that something had happened they would be describing carefully later. Prince prepared to leave. He was halfway to the door when Zappa stopped him. "Sit in tomorrow," Zappa said. Not a request, not an order, a statement. Same time. Prince paused. As what? Zappa considered the question. As yourself. Prince nodded once. All right, that was all it took. The next day, the room felt different before a note was played. Not tense, attentive. People arrived earlier than usual. They tuned more quietly. No one joked about time signatures. Prince took a seat near the edge, guitar still in its case. He didn't open it. Zappa noticed. Not playing today? He asked. Prince shook his head. Not unless I need to. Zappa studied him for a moment, then nodded. Fair. The session began without ceremony. A new piece this time. Dense. Angular. Designed to test coordination more than expression. Prince listened. He didn't intervene when things tightened. He didn't jump in when a passage wobbled. He let the room experience its own friction. At one point, the drummer lost the pocket entirely and stopped, frustrated. Zappa looked toward Prince instinctively, then caught himself. Prince spoke calmly. It was there, he said. You try to grab it. The drummer frowned. So what should I do? Prince shrugged. Stand still. The drummer laughed, unsure if it was a joke. Prince didn't smile. They tried again. This time, the drummer didn't force the count. He waited, let the rhythm arrive. The band followed. Zappa nodded once, almost imperceptibly. By the end of the session, something had shifted again, but this time more deeply. Prince hadn't played a single note, and yet the room had changed its behavior around music. That unsettled people more than virtuosity ever could. As they wrapped up, a young composer approached Prince hesitantly. I've studied his work for years, he said quietly, nodding toward Zappa. I didn't know you could do that without writing it down. Prince thought for a moment. Writing it down is a way of remembering, he said. Feeling it is a way of knowing. The composer nodded. absorbing something he hadn't been taught in school. Zappa overheard and smiled, not interrupting. Later, as Prince prepared to leave again, Zappa walked with him to the door. "You didn't try to impress anyone today," Zappa said. Prince met his eyes. There was nothing to prove. Zappa opened the door for him. "That's what makes it dangerous." Prince stepped into the hallway. Behind him, the room resumed quietly. Not the same way it had before. It wouldn't again. If you're still here, understand this. The most powerful responses aren't always made with sound. Sometimes they're made by changing how sound is allowed to exist at all. Prince didn't answer a challenge. He reframed the question. And once that happened, even Frank Zappa had nothing left to say. The change didn't announce itself. It revealed itself in habits. Zappa began arriving earlier, not to rehearse. He rarely needed that, but to listen before anyone else filled the room with intention. Prince noticed it the third day. The way Zappa stood quietly near the back, arms folded, not correcting, not directing, observing. That was new. The sessions grew looser without becoming careless. People stopped asking whether something was right and started asking whether it felt settled. The language shifted first. The sound followed. Prince remained peripheral by choice. He didn't take the central seat. He didn't lead discussions. He waited for moments when the room asked him something without words. Those moments came often. A passage would tighten. A rhythm would fracture under pressure. Someone would glance toward Prince instinctively, then catch themselves embarrassed by the reflex. Prince never filled the silence immediately. He let it work. One afternoon, Zappa stopped the band mid-phrase. "Play it again," he said, "but don't look at the chart." A few heads turned. This was unusual, risky. Prince looked up, attentive but silent. The band hesitated, then began. The first few bars were tentative. Then something clicked. The structure loosened, breathing on its own terms. Zappa listened carefully. When it ended, he didn't comment on accuracy. "That sounded like music," he said simply. Prince nodded, almost imperceptibly. Later, during a break, Zappa sat beside Prince without ceremony. "You know what bothered me at first?" Zappa said. Prince waited. "You didn't react," Zappa continued. "Most people react to a challenge. You didn't." Prince thought for a moment. "It wasn't about me." Zappa turned to him. "That's exactly why it was." That admission carried weight. Not dramatic, not public, but real. The room never heard that exchange. It didn't need to. The effect showed itself in how Zappa spoke afterward. Less declarative, more curious. His questions changed shape. Instead of why, he asked when. Instead of how, he asked what happens if. Prince listened. He offered little. Enough. The final session came quietly. No announcement. No sense of conclusion. Just another day that happened to matter. Zappa gathered everyone at the end. Not in a circle. Not formally. "I've spent most of my life explaining things," he said. "Sometimes correctly. Sometimes not." He paused. "Today, I'm not going to explain anything." He looked briefly at Prince. "Just long enough." "That's it," he said. "We're done." People lingered afterward, unsure how to leave something that hadn't been named. Prince packed up slowly. As he reached the door, Zappa stopped him one last time. "You know," Zappa said, 7/8 doesn't scare me anymore." Prince met his eyes. It never did. Zappa smiled. This time, it was unmistakable. Prince stepped out into the hallway. Inside, the room felt different. Lighter, more dangerous in the right way. Not because a challenge had been won, because it had dissolved. If you're still here, watching this unfold, understand what actually happened. Prince didn't outplay Frank Zappa. He outweighted the moment that demanded ego. And once ego left the room, there was nothing left to challenge. Only sound and silence. Nothing about it became official. There was no announcement. No quote pulled for headlines. No moment framed as history while it was happening. That was why it lasted. Prince didn't return to those sessions again. Not because he wasn't welcome, but because his presence had already done what it needed to do. Rooms, once adjusted, rarely needed the same influence twice. Frank Zappa continued working as he always had, writing, composing, questioning. But those who knew him well noticed something subtle. He paused more, not when speaking, but when listening. In later rehearsals, when musicians stumbled through odd meters or lost themselves in complexity, Zappa no longer corrected immediately. He waited, sometimes long enough for discomfort to surface. Then he would say only one thing: "Let find you." Those words didn't belong to him before. Prince never mentioned the challenge again. He never framed it as a moment. He never told the story in interviews. To him, it was an event. It was alignment. Months later, at a small gathering, a young composer asked Prince about difficult rhythms. "How do you master something like 7/8?" he asked. Prince considered the question carefully. "You don't," he said. "You stop resisting it." The composer frowned. "That's it." Prince nodded. "That's everything." Across the room, someone who had once been at that original session overheard and smiled quietly. No explanation followed. It didn't need one, because the truth was simple. Frank Zappa hadn't been silenced by being proven wrong. He'd been silenced by recognizing something right. There's a difference. If you're still here, listening to this story, understand what made it unforgettable. It wasn't technical brilliance. It wasn't confidence. It wasn't dominance. It was restraint. Prince didn't rise to the challenge. He stepped past it. And when someone like Frank Zappa has nothing left to add, not out of defeat, but out of respect, that silence carries farther than any applause ever could. The room remembered, and it never asked the same question again.